What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Gooner channel. And this evening, in just a few short hours, Arsenal travel to Molineux to take on Wolverhampton Wanderers in what is just another in a long series of must-win games if we are to have any hope whatsoever of winning the title this season. And I know it's a slim hope. Everybody is already saying that Manchester City will win their 6 remaining games. And if that is true, then there's nothing we can do from this point. We've already lost the league. But it is surprising how many people are despondent already. With 6 games to go, anything can still happen. And Manchester City do have some tricky fixtures ahead of them as well. They will not be playing this weekend because, of course, they take on Chelsea. I expect them to win that, but you never know. So this game, should we win it, will put us top of the table again. And I know they'll have games in hand, but the old adage is always you'd rather have points on the board than games in hand. So should we be this despondent? Should Arsenal fans and fans of all the other teams that like to bait us, should we be conceding the title is over already? What I do know is that if we don't get full 3 points at Wolves, then even I would say, look, I don't necessarily think City will take 4 points from their remaining 6 fixtures. I have a feeling that they may drop 4 points. If that's the case and we win all of our remaining fixtures, then we can still be champions. But what has happened? After such a fantastic start to 2024, played 11, won 10, drew 1, away at treble winners, arguably the best team the Premier League's ever produced, there was hope that we might finally have turned a corner and finally found a way to carry on grinding out results deep into April. Because as we know, April is a cursed month for Arsenal. In 2022, when we were chasing top 4 places, we played 5. We won 2, we lost 3. And we never really managed to get back into the top 4. Last season, despite coming out of nowhere to dominate the Premier League for long spells, just when it mattered most, in April, we played 5, we won 1, lost 1 and drew 3, and were never able to get back to the top of the league. Manchester City ground out all their results. We ended up losing by 5 points. But I think the reality is if they'd needed to win more at the end, they probably would have done. And so actually just being 5 points off the win, just being 5 points off the title last season is a bit misleading. And in this season, we've already played 5 games. We've won 2, drawn 1 and lost 2. So everybody is falling over themselves to say that the problem at Arsenal is that we don't have the right mentality. We don't have the minerals. We don't have the stomach for the fight. We don't have the character. We don't have the pedigree. We don't have the experience. Arteta is not good enough to get us over that line. He can't win us silverware, as if he's the only one not winning silverware. Last season, the fact that Man City did the treble meant there was only one other club in English football that won silverware. So we're not the only team that's failing. Jurgen Klopp didn't win anything last season, and he may not win anything more than the League Cup this season, which is an achievement, I'll give you that. But he's one of the best managers in the world, and he's struggling. So is April just cursed for us because when it comes to it, we just don't have the mentality? Or is there a simpler and easier to stomach explanation? And I think there is. And I talked about it at the end of last season. After the bitter disappointment of the home draw against Southampton that followed on from the 2-2 draw at Liverpool and West Ham, where we'd taken the lead and thrown it away. And everybody said it was because of our mentality then, and that we'd blown our only chance of competing for the title. Well, we're competing again this season, and like I've already said, it's not over yet. Don't make us favourites, but it's not over yet. As fans, we certainly shouldn't be talking about how we've already blown it, and there shouldn't be this level of anger from the social media presence of our fans. Now, I want to say straight away that if you're watching this, I know that most Arsenal fans are reasonable, sensible, intelligent people who understand and appreciate just how far we've come under Arteta and just how much we owe this young side for the fantastic football they've played all season that's brought us to within 2 points of Manchester City with 6 games to go. But the more vocal, tub-thumping elements of our angry, tantrum-having toddler fan base that you see on social media who will say, I'm fuming, this is not good enough, I want Arteta out, and all of that. And they're out there. They are a minority, but they're out there. When they are disappointed by results, their first and only instinct is to look for who to blame. Must be Arteta's fault. Must be Bukayo Saka's fault, because we all said he was world class and he hasn't been the last couple of games. They all say, oh, when it comes to the crunch, we lack the bottle, like they've ever achieved anything as significant as winning the Premier League. I will remind us all that only 11 managers in the history of the Premier League have ever won it. It is incredibly difficult to win, and Arteta is inexperienced, and he has made mistakes. And that's what I want to talk about in this video. So just before I do that, I want to say, first of all, listen, if you haven't yet, click like and subscribe. Love to have you along for this journey. I want us to have a channel here where it isn't all about angry, tub-thumping, histrionics and finger-pointing and blame, and digging out players that represent us and wear our badge and who we owe some support to. As Arsenal fans, we should be expected to be the 12th man. It was very disappointing to see the stadium emptying at the end of the Villa game, but I know just how viscerally disappointing that result was. And against Bayern, we looked like we were never going to get into it. So why is it? Is April cursed? Do we lack the courage and conviction? Well, if that was true, we wouldn't still be up here. I mean, Tottenham lacked the courage and conviction. Chelsea lacked the courage and conviction. I'll give you that. They've been in and out all season. Tottenham fans in September and October were talking about how they were going to win the league, and now it's gone very quiet. The only time you hear from them now is when we slip up. So what is happening? Well, at the end of last season, I said I thought Arteta had done amazingly well. Certainly if I go back to that Boxing Day game when he first played Saka, Martinelli and Smith Rowe, just before that, I really thought there was no chance Arteta would take us forward as a team. We didn't look anywhere near good enough. Got absolutely battered by Manchester City. And that game against the Chelsea team were much better than the banter club they are now. Really reinvigorated us, because suddenly we had passion, we had ideas, we had attacking verve, we had flair, we had young players who could really rejuvenate the club. And let's be honest, since that Boxing Day game against Chelsea, it has been a huge upward trajectory that I'm really proud of. But I did have criticisms as well. Some of my criticisms last season were that Arteta does not, unless he absolutely has to, seem to trust young players. The academy players, of whom there are several to be very excited about, are notable by their absence again this season, just as they were last season. Substitutions arguably weren't made soon enough. Games weren't changed quickly enough. There wasn't a plan B. But the key thing was that he did not have a squad big enough. At the end of last season, it became all too apparent that outside of the first 11, there were no players he really trusted. Well, this season we strengthened. Now, I know Jurrien Timber only made it through the first 65 minutes of the Premier League season, and that's been a bitter disappointment. But Thomas Partey's been out most of the season. We lost Granit Xhaka, obviously. Kai Havertz has come in. He's played almost every game. But we haven't strengthened the team. And the main reason for that is that despite giving Eddie Nketiah, Emil Smith-Rowe, Reece Nelson new contracts, he just doesn't seem to have any faith in them at all. Fabio Vieira, who came in with big fanfare, 30-something million pounds worth of potential on the bench, and he doesn't look like playing at all. So what that's meant is that this season, William Saliba, who was such an important part of last season and this season, and we really noticed when he was injured, has had to play every single minute of every Premier League game. Is that really sustainable? Bukayo Saka, who people are now ready to criticise because he's not star boy after all. Despite all his goal contributions, despite his fantastic goal against Bayern, all I've heard people saying is, see, told you he wasn't that good. This is a player who's played more minutes than any other player in the top 5 leagues of Europe, bar one, I think. And his goal contributions, his threat on the right that usually occupies 2 defenders, all forgotten because of 2 bad games. Martin Odegaard. In fact, look, the reality of our team and the success we've had this year and the season so far has been how hard we work off the ball, the running that we do. And the reality, I think, is that you cannot expect 11 players to play something like 55 games a season at that level of intensity without there being a drop-off. Declan Rice has been an outstanding purchase for us. a landmark purchase, a landmark signing, because he could have gone anywhere. He could have gone to Bayern, he could have gone to Man City, but he chose the process at Arsenal, and I'm so glad he did, and I think you are too. But how often can you keep going to these players and asking them to play every 3 days in must-win games without a break or any sign of a break? The game against Bayern was hugely disappointing, we all know that. But for me, it reminded me a great deal of that game against Fulham. Just before we played Fulham at the end of December, we played West Ham, and it was an anomaly. You couldn't understand it. We'd had 74% of the possession, 30 shots, 8 on target, couldn't get anywhere near scoring, and they scored twice. It didn't make sense. But we thought we'd put it right against Fulham, and then that Fulham game was the game that Bayern reminded me of, because we just lacked energy. Of course, all our detractors will say we lacked the enthusiasm, we lacked the passion, but we just looked tired. And so going into that game against Liverpool, again, out of ideas, out of energy, and the narrative was it's because we don't have a striker, and if we don't get a striker, we can't win the league. And all of the people that have been saying that have been strangely quiet now that we're the second highest scoring team in the Premier League. And then there was the Dubai break. And going into it, all I heard was people saying they shouldn't be allowed a break with their families. They're going on a jolly. They should be working hard. They should be making up for it. Well, if you're tired, isn't the best thing to do have a break? And look what happened when we came back from that jolly. 11 games played, only drew 1, lost none. That's the best form I've ever seen from an Arsenal team. And I've been watching us for 40-something years. So why does the Bayern game remind me of that? Because we just couldn't impose ourselves on the game. Players look tired. Bukayo Saka looks like he's playing with an injury. Ben White, who's been outstanding. Ben White has played 100 of the 106 games he could have played in the league for Arsenal. It's an enormous achievement. But tiredness is a factor. Mikel Arteta has faced the same decision every single time, because every game has been a must-win game. This year, there haven't been any games that we could risk losing. So tight at the top between us, Man City and Liverpool. It was always who was going to blink first. And last week, Liverpool did blink first, losing at home to Crystal Palace, but we couldn't capitalise on it. And I've heard people saying, it was because they watched the game. I don't know if it's anything to do with that. I just think when it came to the second half against Villa, our tiredness kicked in. And so the decision that Arteta has to face really is, do you play players through injury who are 70% fit, or do you trust your bench? After all, these are players he's given a contract to. If Eddie Nketiah is really never going to play for us again, and I know he came on against Bayern, but did anyone really think it was going to make a difference? Emile Smith-Rowe, not seen any time at all since a really good man of the match performance where he started. And then there's Thomas Partey. We go to Jorginho, but no one's even talking about the fact that Thomas Partey is now on the bench and fully fit and rested. Reece Nelson, no chance. Today, when we go to Wolves, Arteta has the same decision to make. It's not different from the decision he had to make on Boxing Day against Chelsea. You don't really think that Martinelli's good enough or that Smith-Rowe's quite there, but you're not going to know till you try him. And I don't envy Arteta. I appreciate this is a Hobson's choice, because let's be honest, if he goes up there and rings the changes, if he does take Saliba out for a rest, or Gabriel, who looks like he's playing through injury, and he plays Kivior or Tomiyasu at centre-back, and we lose, it'll all be his fault. After all, didn't we hear everybody saying that despite making only minimal changes in the FA Cup and the League Cup this season, the reason we went out was because he didn't take it seriously enough, didn't play his first 11? I hear people like Alan Shearer and Gary Lineker saying these players should be able to play week in, week out. They do play week in, week out. It's just I don't think you can expect them to play as well if they're fatigued. I think a good rest like in Dubai would do us all the world of good, but we can't do it. And I know that going into this match, I would really struggle to start Reece Nelson, Eddie Nketiah, Emile Smith-Rowe, Fabio Vieira or Tomiyasu as a centre-back. I appreciate that. I do think it's time to drop Saka for his own good. Maybe bring on his impact sub. I do think that Declan Rice needs a rest. And we have a home game against Chelsea. Now, before you say, we batter Chelsea, Man City didn't. They only got a draw out of Chelsea. I know Chelsea are a banter club at the moment, but they have a result within them. They play quite well against the top 6. They might even beat City in the FA Cup today. I'm not sure who I'm cheering for in that one. I think that this summer is going to be important because we need to strengthen. But it really does come down to, I think, the courage of Arteta. And I worry that he doesn't want to make changes because he thinks only his first 11 can win. That may or may not be true. But the first 11 now are going to have to play a game almost every 3 days. The last 6 games of the season don't have any caps in them. So by the last game of the season, if you desperately have to win it, but you've got no players fit at all, and by fit I don't mean injured, I mean if a player is 70% of what there are. I mean, the Wolves players we go up against today will be fresher than us, and almost every team that we face will be fresher than us. So I will hope that Arteta does something all the fans will be angry about. And everyone will be waiting to point a finger at him as if he's the only person to blame for the fact we haven't won Silverware in 20 years. Arteta, I think, will grow into the role just like Alex Ferguson did. Just like Pep Guardiola did. And he will learn from experience, and he will know that sometimes you do have to trust players. After all, Alex Ferguson, when he decided to trust his youngsters, was told by Alan Hansen famously that you don't win anything with youngsters. That's a terrible impression. I was just terrible defending. Better impression, but not relevant. It really comes down to this. You have to be brave to win the big trophies. As much as none of us want to see Fabio Vieira start today, who knows? Maybe this is the game to play him. Maybe the last thing Wolves need is young players fighting for positions coming into that side. I would certainly not be playing Eddie Nketiah up front, but I would be playing Jesus instead of Saka on the right. And I would at least be thinking about bringing Eddie Nketiah on before the 80th minute or 88th minute. Now, I want to hear from you because you might be one of those rabid fans who's like, I can't believe you're defending Arteta and this rubbish bunch of players who've all they've achieved is similar results to the... all they've achieved is similar results this season to the Invincibles, but with those frustrating defeats. I'm not writing this league off, and I won't until it's done, until it's over. And I don't think any of us should be. But I am worried about tonight's game. I do worry that we're going to run out of ideas, run out of energy, and we'll be up against the Wolverhampton Wanderers team that are no mugs. Although that home record isn't as good as their away record, it could be a banana skin. As could Chelsea, and then let's not forget, after that we have Tottenham away. And their fans only really have one thing to cheer for this season. And that is to beat us and stop us winning the title. How grateful I am that I'm not that kind of fan. How grateful you should be that you're not that kind of fan. After all, I've heard no Arsenal fans running around going, isn't it a good thing that we lost the Bayern? Because now there won't be 5 Champions League places. It's just not in our nature. It's not in our DNA. It's not the kind of fans we are or have become or should become. So, let me know in the comments if you totally disagree. Let me know in the comments if you do agree. I've had some fantastic comments lately and I'm doing a video later to respond to all of them. So thank you for your input. You're what makes this channel work. So thank you so much for your likes, your subscribes and your comments. And until I see you after the Wolverhampton Wanderers game, hopefully to celebrate, be lucky and lots of love.